Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge and our last Blitzkrieg campaign playthrough. Today we will begin the 20th of December turn, so that's turn 5 in the campaign. And I think everyone that has seen the 19th of December episodes would agree that yesterday was a bad day overall for the Germans. Their westward progress was brought basically to a standstill. The momentum of the attack seems to be slipping away rather quickly, and there are currently 4 major problems that the Germans are going to have to somehow overcome if victory is to be theirs. First is the high number of AV step losses they've incurred. A lot of panzer losses so far this game, and you can lay that at the foot largely of 7th Armored Division. They've performed very well for the Americans so far. Second is the high amount of fatigue that most of their formations have accrued relatively quickly in the campaign, and that fatigue is going to have a negative impact on their formation's ability to get full activations. Third are the continuing American reinforcements that are showing up from turn to turn. And then fourth is mud. 2 consecutive days of mud have really slowed down 2nd SS Panzer Corps, and that's the 2 formations that are required to exit the map in order to get that sudden death victory that the Germans are hoping for. And what the Germans really need is for this mud to clear up, hopefully today on the 20th, so that those truck-bound formations can really finally start to make some decent progress. It's been 2 full days, and the entire Panzer Corps has a single battalion west of the Our River, and even that battalion is still well east of Saint-Vith, so they still have quite a ways to go to reach the exit locations. And while things may not be looking very good for the Germans, the Americans are having some issues of their own, particularly in the north. 2nd Infantry Division has a large portion of its formation currently cut off with no safe path back to the headquarters. The 1st Infantry Division has arrived in the Malmedy area. However, 12th SS Panzer is moving up, and I think today we will see, or I expect to see, a critical battle erupting in the Malmedy region between these 2 formations. 12th SS also has 1st SS minus Kampfgruppe Piper hitting 1st Infantry Division further to the east, and if they can overwhelm the eastern end of the 1st Infantry line, there's really nothing preventing 1st SS from then gaining access into the rear areas of 99th and 2nd U.S. Infantry Division. Further to the west, things look a little better for the Americans as the 82nd Airborne has arrived in the Parker's Crossroads area, and around Bastogne, the Germans really haven't put much pressure on 101st Airborne or the other formations down there defending in that sector. So I think the 20th is working out to be once again another critical day in the campaign. The Germans are running out of time as the Americans have just a few more turns before a veritable avalanche of reinforcements begin to arrive and really start to turn the tide in the battle. So if the Germans are going to win this thing, they're going to need to do so probably in the next 3 to 4 turns. So with that said, let's see how today starts off. Now, before we get started on the turn itself, I thought what I'd start doing from this point on at the beginning of each turn is kind of give you a little bit of a victory point update. Now, this is the standard victory conditions where you will total the number of victory point locations the Germans hold anytime from the 26th of December onward, and then compare that or subtract from that the number of American victory points they have at the end of the game. And this may help to give you a little bit easier idea of the progress of how the attack is going. What I've done is I have marked only those victory point locations that are going to grant a victory point to one side or the other, with a red die for the Germans and a blue die for the Americans. And as you can see, the Americans currently have Malmedy, Stavelot, Trois Ponts, Vielsalm, Parker's Crossroads, Bastogne, Martelange, and Edelbrook. So that's going to be a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 victory points is what they would have were this the last turn of the campaign. On the German side, the Germans have the twin villages here of Rocherat-Krinkelt, they have Camp Delsenborn, and they have Houffalize. So 3. So it currently stands 8 U.S. to 3 German, which would be an American victory. Now, the Germans do have a few more, actually several more victory point locations that they can attain, including taking some from the Americans. Vielsalm there is probably not going to be held on by the Americans for very long. You've got Parker's Crossroads here. Most of the German victory point locations are out here in the western half of the maps, and as you can see, they just simply haven't reached that part of them of the battlefield yet. So 8 to 3 as it stands here at the beginning of the 20th, and we'll see what it looks like tomorrow. Now let's go ahead and see what the weather's going to be. All right, first thing we're going to do is weather determination, and this first die roll here is arguably the single most important roll for the Germans this turn, and that's going to be the ground state. Now the current ground state is mud, as you can see here, which means we're looking at a 50-50 chance of normal conditions or mud again. Freeze cannot occur until the 23rd of December at the earliest. So for the Germans, they're hoping for a 1 through 3 here. The Americans obviously would be perfectly happy for the mud to continue. And the Germans do get their wish. That 2 is going to turn the current ground back to normal, which means their truck-bound units are finally going to get to cover some territory here. Now moving on to the atmosphere, because we have a normal ground condition, we've got an okay chance for some fair weather, and we roll another 2, which is actually going to leave it right here at fair. And because the atmosphere is fair, the visibility is probably going to be 2 hexes, but let's see. 3 with fair does indeed leave the visibility at 2 hexes. So the 2 hex visibility, the Americans may get some more air points today because of the fair skies, but for the Germans, again, the single most important weather issue was the ground state, and we are back to normal. Now I will go ahead and we'll take a look at the air points and replacements. All right, we'll roll for the German replacements first. Now the non-AV replacements, the Germans will get their standard 8 steps today, and for the AV replacements, let's see what they managed to roll. It's an alright roll. It's a 4. That's going to give them 3 AV replacements plus 1 Tiger step, and I'm pretty sure they do. They are down 1 step on at least one of their Tiger units, so that'll come in handy. And then just 3 AV replacements. They could stand to use probably 3 times that number. But over to the Americans now. For the Americans, their non-AV replacements goes up just a little bit from yesterday's 4 to 6 now. So again, the Americans could use probably 4 or 5 or 6 times that number of replacements, but they're going to get 6 non-AV replacements. And for the AV replacements, let's see what they end up with here. 3. It's an average. They're going to end up with 4 AV replacements, and I think I know exactly where they will all end up. But now let's see if they get any air points. With their fair atmosphere, they're going to get somewhere between 3 and 6. I thought we were going to get all 6 there. That's 2 is going to result in 4 air points again for the Americans. So 4 AV steps, 4 air points for the Americans, and then the Germans are going to get 3 AV replacements and 1 Tiger replacement. I'm going to go ahead and apply all those, and once we've got them assigned, I will kind of fill you in on where we decided to place them. With the German replacements, they had no dead Tigers actually, and I think there are only 2 Tiger units on map currently. You've got the 501st here with Piper, and I think it's this 506th. It's an independent unit that is currently in support of the, I think it's the 326th Volksgrenadier up in the north, and both of those are at full strength, which means that 1 Tiger AV step could be used to replace a regular AV step. What we've done is we've given 2 of those steps to 2nd Panzer Division here, again trying to build up the 2nd Battalion of 3rd Panzer, and we wanted to bring a comp group of Goodman back up to half strength at least. The other 2 we gave 1 to 116th Panzer, again trying to build up 2nd Battalion of the 16th, that is now half strength, and then Lair, 2nd Battalion 130th, also was brought back up to half strength. Now on the non-AV side, 1st SS Panzer got a step here to bring 1st of the 1st Panzer Grenadier back up to full strength. 2nd Panzer got a non-AV step as well, so now they're 2 of their battalions are only down a single step. Panzer Lehr, we anticipate making some difficult infantry attacks in the upcoming couple of turns, so they actually got 3 of the replacements here. Both of the battalions of the 901st as well as the 2nd Battalion of the 902nd, and you can see 901st now is at full strength. The remaining 3 were given to some infantry formations. 12th Volksgrenadier received 2 of them, bringing all of their battalions up to just a single step loss at this point. And then lastly, the 277th Volksgrenadier up here brought back the destroyed 2nd Battalion of the 989th. So they've got 1 step. They'll begin the rebuilding process for that battalion. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the Americans. Well, no surprise for the Americans, the 4 AV steps that they received all went into 7th Armored Division. We brought Task Force Chappie back up to half strength, ditto Fuller. Task Force Ray, which is holding out in Vilsholm, causing all kinds of problems to Piper, actually does have a safe path, believe it or not. So we went ahead and took advantage of that to sneak in some replacements, bringing him up to 2 steps, and then Wempel also was raised to 2 steps. Decided against bringing back Task Force Brown at this point, since we have so many task forces that are down at a single step. We want to start to build some of these up if we can before we start to bring back the completely destroyed battalions at this point. So that's where the 4 AV replacement steps went. Now for the non-AV replacements, they all went into infantry formations. The first 2 of them went into 4th Infantry Division. We wanted to bring 1st of the 12th and 3rd of the 12th back up to half strength down there, since the Germans do seem to be starting to put a little bit of pressure on 4th ID, and we don't want them to, they've got a very wide sector, and we don't want them to have any of their units destroyed, because they really can't afford to lose any at this point. Then we went with 1 step into the 109th Regiment of the 28th Infantry Division down in the south. I would have liked to have put it into 1st of the 109th, which is currently holding Dekirk and is almost definitely going to be attacked in some fashion. I would like to try to make sure it stays on map, but unfortunately it is currently cut off by the Germans, so we could not reinforce him with any replacements, so instead we continued to build back the 2nd Battalion here and added a 2nd step to that battalion. And the last 3 steps all went into the 99th Infantry Division, which is, as you can see, very badly mauled. We brought back the 1st Battalion of the 395th, and we also brought back the 3rd Battalion of the 393rd, so 2 units will appear on map in or adjacent to the headquarter unit, and then we added a 2nd step to the 1st of the 393rd, which was brought back last turn on the 19th. So they are slowly rebuilding here. Again, as you can see, it's going to be at least a few days before a few more of these battalions are in any condition to stand in the line. And unfortunately, as you'll see when we head to the map and the turn starts, they really don't have the luxury of a couple days out of the line. So that's where we stand on the replacements. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and prepare the reinforcements. I think this is a fairly light day for both sides as far as reinforcements go, so this shouldn't take too long. I'll brief you on the reinforcements, and then we will be ready to do the assignments and first player determination, and we'll get the ball rolling. Now, before I show you the reinforcements for the turn, which are actually pretty light for both sides, one of the very few instances of a variable reinforcement occurs on today, and it's the biggest one by far of the game, and it's for the Germans. It's 11th Panzer Division. Now, historically, I believe this Panzer Division was rerouted or diverted to Operation Nordwind, which was happening further to the south. However, last Blitzkrieg gives you a 1 in 6 chance of the division actually remaining with this operation and showing up as a reinforcement today. So I will roll 1 die, and the order of arrival says that if the division arrives on a 6, otherwise it does not. So here we go. Another big roll for the Germans. And it's the exact opposite of a 6. So 11th Panzer Division will not arrive in this playthrough of the game. So with that, now I think we can move on and show you just what arrived and where today. All right, for the reinforcements, the Americans received 2 artillery points, both of which were assigned to 101st Airborne. That brings them to a total of 3 assigned artillery points to go with the 3 organic points that they have, for a total of 6. However, they are in a prepared defense, so that's going to be halved down to 3 unless that changes. And then, as far as units go, the only units that arrived were it was the rest of the 84th Infantry Division up here in the north. You can see they received 2 infantry regiments, that's 6 infantry battalions, an engineer battalion. They're attached a tank battalion and tank destroyer battalion. That's about it for the Americans, in addition to the 2 battalions of the 99th that they rebuilt and came on map. For the Germans, the 560th Volksgrenadier here did finally receive some red support. Their intrinsic Hetzer battalion, very small battalion, only 2 steps in it, has arrived, but it has indeed arrived. And they had 1 artillery point that was unassigned, and they did assign that to 2nd Panzer Division. So that's going to do it for the reinforcements. Now let's go ahead and, as well as the assignments, let's go ahead and see if we can determine the first player now. And so we come to yet another pretty important initiative roll. Both sides, I think, would agree at this point that the crisis point in the battle is in the Malmedy area up in 1st Infantry Division's sector, and I think whichever side can get the jump up there is going to end up having a fairly sizable advantage over the next couple of days. So with that said, we'll roll for the Germans first. And that's not a very good roll of 5. We'll see if the Americans can beat that. And they tied 5 and 5. All right, so we'll roll again here. All right, second time at this, the Germans roll a 4, even worse. And the Americans are hoping to beat that, and they do, just barely, with a 5. Well, that was a stunning display of dice rolling skill. 4 rolls, none higher than a 5. Let's hope the rest of the turn goes a little bit better than that for at least one of the sides. All right, the Americans are up first again, which is going to complicate things for the Germans. So I think we know which formation we're going to activate first, and it's probably going to be the aforementioned 1st Infantry Division. I'll double check that, and then we'll pick up with the first activation of the 20th. For the Americans, the immediate danger is in the north, and you can see here they've got a chunk of 2nd Infantry Division cut off, although rather tenuously right now. 2nd Infantry Division is not, the rest of it is not in that great of a situation, but the real threat is a little further to the west, where you can see 1st SS and 12th SS are now crashing into the 1st Infantry Division's sector here. And particularly on the left flank of the 1st Infantry Division, here around the village of Sauerbrot. This road is what secures the logistical tail for the 1st Infantry Division and the 99th. and may end up seeing the 2nd and or 9th transfer to the west here. If the Germans can succeed in pushing the 1st Infantry Division out of this area, and if they can sweep up here into the Hohesven, they will cut this supply path off, forcing the Americans to basically shift all the way out here to the west and have everything come running down here through Spa. That's an awful lot of ground that the Americans are going to have to give up if that happens. So, with the initiative this turn, first item on the agenda for the Americans is to secure this area here, actually from Malmedy stretching over to Sauerbrot, and dig in. So we're going to activate the 1st Infantry Division and have them assume a prepared defense and see if maybe we can stabilize things here in the north. All right, we're kicking off the 20th of December with an activation of the 1st Infantry Division. You can see that their trains are just up this highway here on map, and they have a complete MSR. We are, in fact, going to enter a prepared defense, so I will mark that now, and that will bring us to our snafu roll. You can see from the division card here that they do have a fatigue level of 2, so that's going to be a -2. They're not marked with coordination. They're not mixed. They still have the -1 game specific, and the Americans are going to be laboring under that today and tomorrow, the 21st, before it finally disappears. So that's -3. The trains are at optimal distance, though, so that'll bring it back up to a -2. They're not using tracks, they're not crossing the streams, they're not ghosted, so a -2 for the Americans. Now, with the prepared defense, the best they can get is a partial anyway, so that 9 -2 is a 7, would be enough for a full activation, but again, the prepared defense is going to limit us to a partial. That's going to give us 1 objective marker, which I think we will place, and it's going to have our available artillery. We have 4 organic, 2 attached, so that's going to be 6 halved is 3 points. And we may end up trying to make a couple of attacks here, and whether we do so or not, we're definitely going to be shooting off our artillery points to try to attrit the Germans. Our focus with the 1 objective marker, we do have 12th SS right here on the doorstep of Malmedy, but right now our focus is here on the left flank near Sauerbrot, so I think we're going to place our objective marker here on top of Kampf Group Knittel, and that's going to cover all of the 1st Infantry, 1st SS for units in this area. So I'll take a minute here. We'll figure out how we're going to sort of attack the situation, if you will, and then pick back up once I've got something worthwhile to show you guys. All right, the 1st Infantry Division started off by advancing some battalions a little bit further south here and bringing the 3rd of the 26th back through Malmedy here, basically with the trains for the 106th and CCB of the 9th in this hex. The Norwegians have flipped to their deployed side and are working their way back up the highway here. 1st of the 16th again is moving back to the east, and I think at this point we're going to bring Task Force Davison. They flipped to their deployed side. They're going to move along the tracks here for 1, which is going to place them in the AV EZOC of 3rd of the 1st SS here. And we will choose to do a stopping engagement. Now, they have an AV of 4 and an action rating of 4 for a total of 8. The SS has an action rating of 4. They do have support, and it's really good support with an AV of 5 for a total of 9. So Davison's actually rolling with a -1 on the engagement table, so he'll need a 7 on the dice or better to drop that support. And actually, he rolls extraordinarily well. The 11 becomes a 10, almost inflicted a step loss on the support, but the modifier, the -1 modifier, prevented that. So he has successfully dropped the support, which means he's eligible to continue moving, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to spend his 2nd movement point to enter Sauerbrot here, which is going to put him in another AV ZOC, this time of Kampfgruppe Knittel. It is a real unit, which means we have to do at least 1 stopping engagement. He has 1 fire event left, and he will take advantage of that. Again, he's a 4 plus 4 is 8. Knittel is only an AV1 AV AR of 5 for a total of 6, so
Davison actually gets a +2 on the engagement table this time. It'd be nice to see him roll well again. And he rolls well enough. It's a pretty decent roll. 9 + 2 is 11. That's going to be a target loss and retreat. So he did manage to inflict a step loss here on Kniddle and drives him back 3 hexes. Let's get this out of the way. And where do we want Kniddle to go? 1, 2, 3. I'll just go back up the tracks here south of the river. And Davison has used both of his fire events, so he's going to be stopped for the turn. Now, let's see. I think what we're going to do is we're going to slide 3rd Battalion of the 18th over. I think that's 1. Yep, that's 1. And then he's going to make an attack assisted by Davison. And we're going to spend 1 artillery point in a suppression barrage. So this is going to give us an action rating of 4. He has red support, as you see here, for 5. There's no double objective zone. The attacking formation does have a prepared defense, so that's going to be a -1. That's going to drop it back down to a 4. We've got +2 for the suppression barrage, makes it a 6. He is assisted for a 7. And the defenders have an action rating of 4. They have no support. They are not in terrain, and they are not in a prepared defense, which means it's a 7 attacking 4. It's a +3 on the combat table. So the Americans only need to roll a 4 or better to force them out of the hex. Let's see what happens. And they do manage a 4, not much better, but a little bit better. That is going to be +3 is a 9. That is no loss to the Americans. It'll be a situational retreat and traffic, which I think will suffice for the Americans' purposes. We'll flip the SS over to their move side, and we will retreat them 3 hexes as well. And I'll go 1, 2, 3 back towards the headquarters here, and that'll put 3rd of the 18th in the village of Robertville. Now, I think there's just one more thing we're going to do here. We're going to deploy 2nd Battalion, and tracks are, I should know this by now, but it's been a bit of a break, so let me make sure I get this right. I think infantry cost on track is 1/2. Yes, it is. So, with 2 movement points, he's going to come across here for a 1/2, into Sauerbrot for 1, and he'll actually enter the track west of there for 1.5. And now the question is, excuse me, do we want to make an attack with either 3rd of the 16th or 2nd of the 18th? We've got 2 artillery points left. Would it be helpful to have one of these guys? That's some terrain there. We are laboring under the -1 for being in a prepared defense. So I think we can have him advance here. I'd like to push this guy out of there, but I don't have anybody who can assist 3rd of the 16th. So let's now, you know what? Well, he's in terrain, isn't he? Yes, he is. He is not in terrain, and neither is he. Let's go ahead, and I think we will forego any attack, but we are going to fire our 2 artillery points, and we're going to fire them as a destruction barrage outside of combat. We're actually going to drop both of them on the SS Pioneer unit here. So, since he is in the clear and he is not in a prepared defense, just a 3 or better will inflict a step loss on the Pioneers there. Let's see what we get here. and we get one hit, one miss. So that'll be a step loss on the Pioneers. Not fantastic. I think that's probably their first step loss, actually. So I'll mark that. And did we have any other step losses? Yes, we did. Knittel took a step loss. That's his second. And I think that was it for the step losses there. All right, we'll clean this up. And we'll roll for fatigue. It's going to be a 3 or less, considering the attack that we made. And a 5 means no fatigue accrual. Now, do we want to attempt to conduct a second activation? And yeah, why not? Let's see. Let's see if we can do this. Need a 4, 5, or 6. We get a 6. So that's going to be good for a second activation. The snafu roll is going to be the exact same as before. It's a -2. And the 8 becomes a 6. That's good enough for a partial. Let me go ahead and take a look at this here, and then we'll pick back up with the second activation momentarily. Picking up with the second activation, I think we're going to keep the focus here in the east, in the Sauerbrot sector. So we've placed our objective marker here on top of the SS Pioneer Battalion. We have our 3 artillery points to use, and I think what we're going to do, Davison needs to be a little bit careful because he only has a single step left, but we are going to we don't want an AV unit sitting in Sauerbrot because it's very easy to drive them off, even in a prepared defense. So he's going to come south here and enter the AV ZOC from the support unit here, the 1st SS, and go ahead and actually make an engagement to try to drop the support there. Well, let's see, he's got 1 step left. It would be a 4 + 4 is an 8. The defender has an action rating of 4 with an AV of 5, so it's actually -1. He'd need to roll a 7 or better to drop the support. If he rolls a 4 or less, he would actually be destroyed. So I'm wondering if it might not be better to maybe hold off. No, let's go ahead and do it. We'll make the engagement there. We'll see. Hopefully they'll roll at least better than a 4. And unfortunately, that did not happen. So the 3 - 1 becomes a 2. That is a fire loss and traffic. That will be the end of Davison, and we will place some traffic in the hex there. So it's not starting off too well here in the second activation for the Americans. However, they will go ahead and make an attack here with the 3rd of the 18th. And they'll be assisted by the 2nd of the 18th on the 1st of the 2nd SS there. We will spend one of our artillery points as a suppression barrage. So that's going to give us an action rating of 4. We do have red support for 5. We're in a prepared defense, brings it back down to a 4. 5, 6 for the suppression, 7 for the assist. The defender has an action rating of 4. They have support for 5. They're not in prepared defense, and they're not in any terrain, so this is only a +2. They're going to need to roll a 5 or better to take the hex. Let's see what we can do here. And they manage much better than a 5. They manage 2 5s, as a matter of fact. 10 + 2 becomes a 12. That's actually going to inflict a step loss on the Germans, and it's going to be an automatic retreat. Now, he is 3 hexes from the HQ refuge, so he can go 3 hexes back here, and we'll just put him with the headquarters for now. And the Americans will enter, and we'll go ahead and mark off the loss there. That was the 1st Battalion, 2nd Panzer Grenadier Regiment. So 1st Battalion, 2nd, that's their first loss of the campaign. So the Americans kind of averaged out or made up for the engagement there with Davison. Now we've got 2 artillery points left, and we'll have 2nd of the 18th go ahead and spot both of those in a destruction barrage outside of combat on the Pioneers there. They are in clear terrain, so 3 or better to inflict a step loss. And the American hot dice continue. 5 and 6. That's going to be 2 steps on the Pioneers, which will not destroy them, but will take them down to a single step remaining. And I think the only thing left for us to do is to bring first of the 16th over 1, 2 into Sauerbrot. So, as you can see, we now kind of have one task force over here in the east in the Sauerbrot sector. We've got another task force of 1st Infantry here to the west around Malmedy, and the two are kind of being linked together by a couple of battalions in between here. It's not maybe an ideal situation, but we do think we've at least stabilized the eastern sector here. So we'll see what happens when the Germans get around to launching their attacks. That should do it for this activation, however. Just remains to roll for some fatigue. We made an attack, so a 3 or less. And a 4 avoids any fatigue accrual, so they were able to get through not 1 but 2 activations without increasing their fatigue level, which is good. That's going to wrap it up for first ID. And now we'll see where the Germans want to start off the day. Well, the Germans really do think that 12th SS may be their best chance for advancing today. They're going to be critical to any success they can hope to have in the north. I think to start off the day, we're going to actually slide to the southwest here. And Parker's Crossroads, currently held by the 82nd Airborne, is a key road junction. And to give the Germans an alternative in case 12th SS their attacks go poorly, to give them an alternative out here, the Germans would really love to get control of the Crossroads here, and 82nd Airborne is not yet in a prepared defense. So rather than give the Americans the opportunity to put the 82nd into a prepared defense and make it a lot tougher to take those Crossroads, I think we're going to see if we can get 116th Panzer Division up and running and make a stab for the Crossroads here. So let's see what 116th Panzer can do. Activating 116th Panzer. The trains are on map just here, stacked with the Panzer Battalion. So we have a complete MSR running back off to the east, and most of the division, as you can see, here's the headquarters located here. Most of the division is kind of centered in this area. We do have a couple of battalions trailing off to the east, and then we've got the Panzer Grenadier Battalion here well out to the west, where the rest of the division hopes to follow. We're not going to enter a prepared defense, obviously, which means we're going right on to the snafu roll. The fatigue, as you can see, unfortunately, is a 2, so it's going to be a -2. They're not marked with coordination, and they're not mixed. Game specific is a 0 for the Germans, which brings us to optimal distance. The trains are at optimal distance, so that's -1, but they are ghosted, which is going to drop it back down to a -2. -2, this means a 9 or better to get a full activation. And actually, those boxcars are going to become a 10, which is indeed a full activation. So we will get 3 organic plus 2 assigned artillery points for a total of 5 for this activation, and we'll get 2 objective markers, and we'll have to figure out where we want to place them. I'll go ahead and take a look at that and start into the activation once we'll pick back up once we've got something, if anything, worth seeing. It is going to be quite a bit of driving today for 116th Panzer, since they are still a ways from 82nd out here. So we'll pick back up here momentarily with the first activation. All right, 116th started off by advancing the Panzer Grenadier Battalion up the road here. They then brought the Kampfgruppe Stefan up here. That's going to put them in the AV ZOC from the support unit with the 82nd here, and we will do an engagement. We have an action rating of 4. I'm sorry, I have an AV of 4. Action rating 5 is 9. +1 for the double objective zone is 10. The defenders have an action rating of 4 and an AV of 2 for a total of 6. So 10 minus 6 is a +4 on the targeted support line. And a solid roll is an 8 plus 4 becomes a 12. That's going to be target loss and drop. So not only did they drop the support from the glider troops here, they also managed to kill a step of the support unit. That was Stefan's first fire event. He will spend his second fire event to do an attack by fire. They are in terrain, so a 5 or 6 to inflict a step loss. A 2 will not do it, but that's going to bring us to an assault, which is going to be made by Stefan and supported by the Panzer Grenadiers stacked with them. They have an action rating of 5. We're going to spend 1 of our artillery points for a suppression barrage. They are dual, which makes it 6. Double objective zone is 7, 8, 9 for the artillery, and 10 for the assist. On the defending side, they have an action rating of 4. They have no support. They are not in prepared defense, but they are in terrain, which will bring them up to a 5. So a 10 minus 5 is a plus 5 on the combat table, which does not bode too well for the Americans. Let's see how the attack goes. It's an average roll of a 7. Plus 5 becomes 12. That is a D1 and an automatic retreat. So the Americans will suffer a step loss. They will flip to their move side and go back to the headquarters refuge up the road here, just north of Parker's Crossroads, and then Stefan will enter the hex. Now, I could also move the Panzer Grenadiers in there as well, since they were stacked with the attacking unit. But I really hate stacking units, especially since they're both soft targets. That would be giving the Americans a 2-for-1 on their artillery, and I don't know that we really gain all that much by getting these Panzer Grenadiers another hex up the road. So I think we're going to leave them where they are. And now it's just going to be a matter of bringing up the rest of the division from the east. I don't think we're going to have any more combat possibilities. As you can see, the objective zone only extends out to these hexes here. So one of the key things as a defender in the Battalion Combat Series is you want to defend in depth. And what does that mean? Well, you can see by deploying your defending units 3 hexes apart, it's going to force the attacker to use more than one objective marker in order to penetrate deeply into your defenses. And of course, what that means is he's not going to have the luxury of the double objective zone giving him that additional +1 on his attacks. Then we can see this sort of in action right here with the 82nd. The Germans decided to go ahead and concentrate their double objective zone here on the outlying battalion, simply because the rest of the division is not going to be in a position to make any attacks here closer to the Crossroads in this activation. What they're hoping for is to get a second activation, get at least a partial, but preferably another full activation, which might enable them to actually seize the Crossroads here. So we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of break it here, move up the rest of the division, and then show you where they end up, and then do the fatigue roll and second activation check. Here you see the end of the activation for the 116th Panzer. We've got the division basically kind of strung out along the main highway here, heading up to Parker's Crossroads from the south. We did leave the trains over here and flip them out of ghost mode, and we did that. They're still at optimal distance from the headquarters down here. That's going to eliminate that -1 for being ghosted, giving them a better chance to get a full activation, assuming they can get that second activation. So the only thing left to do now, after cleaning up the objective markers here, is to roll for fatigue. They made 1 attack, so a 3 or less will see their fatigue increase. And that 6 means no fatigue accrual. Now for the big roll, that second activation, we need a 4, 5, or 6, so a 50-50 shot here. Let's see what happens. and a 5 is going to do it. So we have a second activation now for 1/16th Panzer. Let's take a look at the snafu modifiers. We still have -2 for fatigue. They're not marked coordination or mixed, no game specific. Optimal distance brings that up to a -1, and that's going to do it. So a -1 here, 8 or better on the dice will give them a second full activation today. And somebody's living right, because that 8 -1 becomes a 7. So they did get their second full activation. We'll take a look at where we want to place the objective markers. We've got 2 of them. And then we'll go ahead and get going on the activation. Should have cleaned up that temporary drop support. That no longer applies. So I think what we'll do is, obviously we want to take the Crossroads located right here. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to place our objective markers not on the Crossroads, but just 1 hex northwest of them. That will create an objective zone which is going to cover all of these units in this vicinity here. And now that we have an opportunity to make some rather important attacks, I'm going to take a moment here, figure out how exactly 1/16th Panzer wants to approach the problem of clearing 82nd out of the Crossroads and seizing them. And then I'll also go ahead and we'll get it shifted up here so you can get a little better look at what's going on up here in the vicinity of the Crossroads, and we'll pick back up once 1/16th Panzer has started the activation. I think we're going to start off the activation by bringing up a Panzer Grenadier Battalion back here. We're going to deploy them, go 1, 2 and a half. Then we're going to move Conf Group Stefan up half, 1. Now Stefan will engage the support here of 2nd of the 504th. We have an AV4, action rating 5 is 9, +1 for the double objective zone is 10. And we have an AR of 5 and an AV of 2 for a total of 7. So it's a +3 on target is support. And that is a very good roll for a number of reasons. Not only is it a boxcars, that 12 becomes a 15. That is target loss and drop. What that's going to do is not only drop the support of this individual battalion, but it's going to kill the second and final step of the 82nd's support unit, which means the entire division is now no longer with any AV support. That is going to make things a little bit easier on the Germans here moving forward. And with Stefan's second fire event, he will do an attack by fire here. They are in terrain, so again a 5 or 6 to inflict a step loss, and a 1 will miss. However, it is now time for Stefan to make his attack, and he will be supported by the Panzer Grenadier Battalion that is stacked with him. We will spend 1 point in a suppression barrage. We have an action rating of 5, duel is 6, double objective zone 7, 8, 9 for the artillery, 10 for the assist. The defenders have an action rating of 5. They are in terrain for 6, they have no support, and they are not in a prepared defense. So 10 minus 6 is a +4 on the combat table. And it is an average dice roll, but the +4 is going to be good enough to make it an 11, which is a D1 and automatic retreat. So the 2nd of the 504th is going to flip. They are 3 hexes from the HQ refuge. 1, 2, 3. Let's put him. We'll put him on the road on the far side here in some terrain, and then Stefan will be able to enter the hex. We'll leave the Panzer Grenadiers where they are. And so the first opening attack by 1/16th Panzer here has been successful. Let me go ahead and mark off the losses both to the support unit for the 82nd as well as for 2nd of the 504th, and then we'll pick back up. Continuing on, we are next going to move up the Panzer Battalion here. We're going to flip them over to their deployed side. You're going to come up the road here for 1, and now that the entire division is without any support, there's no AV ZOCs that the Germans have to worry about, so then he can move directly here for 4. And upon reaching there, he's out of movement points, but he is going to use 2 fire events here on 2nd of the 505th in an attack by fire. So again, terrain will make it a 5 or 6 to score a hit. And wow, the Germans really are on fire here. That's going to be 2 step losses on 2nd of the 505th. Now we will bring up, I think we'll bring up this trailing Panzer Grenadier Battalion, 1, 2.5. We're going to have the Panzer Grenadier Battalion make an attack here on 2nd of the 505th, assisted by the Panzer Battalion. We will spend another artillery point in a suppression barrage. It's going to give us an action rating of 4. Red support is 5, double objective zone 6, 7, 8 for the artillery, 9 for the assist. The defenders have an action rating of 5. They have no support. They are not in prepared defense, but they do get +1 for terrain, so that's a 6. So a 9 minus 6, it's a +3 on the combat table. Germans should have a decent chance of taking the hex, which they will, but let's see, that's 6 +3 is a 9. That's just enough to avoid an attack or loss. It will be a situational retreat and traffic for the Germans. So the situational retreat, the traffic is going to be a bit of an annoyance for the Germans because they would have liked to have pushed through the Crossroads. Granted, they do now possess the Crossroads. Let's see, these guys have to go back 3 hexes. That's all open. Let's send them out here for now. We'll do that. We'll put them here on the road. Okay, so that being done, let's go ahead and mark with traffic so I don't forget. Right, that's a bit of an annoyance for the Germans here. However, they have achieved their goal, at least, of occupying the Crossroads, and they really need to try and gain as much ground as possible, pushing back the 82nd before they go into a prepared defense. Let's see. If I enter that hex, I'm basically stopped, although I can attack out of it. Let me figure out a couple of things here. We still have the half-track Panzer Grenadiers, the 2nd Panzer Battalion, the headquarters, and Pioneer Battalion are off screen just to the south here, and then we have 1 more Panzer Grenadier Battalion. I want to make the most of this, so let me take a few seconds here so you're not listening to me hem and haw, and then we'll resume. Right, continuing on, we are going to deploy this Panzer Grenadier Battalion here. They're going to come up the road into the Crossroads here where they have to stop, but they then will make an attack here on the unprepared battalion, the glider battalion. We'll spend 1 of our artillery points for a suppression barrage. So we have action rating 4, support is 5, double objective zone 6, 7, 8 with the artillery. The defenders have an action rating of 3, and they are in terrain for 4. So a +4 on the attack. And we roll a 3, +4 is a 7. That's an A1, desituational, and traffic, which is just barely enough to take the hex. So 1, 2, 3. Let's go back up the road here. The Panzer Grenadiers will push them out of the way. And that's 1st of the 156. That's going to take a step loss. And we'll follow that up with the other Panzer Grenadier Battalion coming up 1, 2, 5, and do we want to make a shock attack? I don't think so. 5. They'll make a regular attack assisted by the Panzer Battalion in the hex, and we'll spend another point here for a suppression barrage. So again, we have 4. Red support is 5, 6, 7 artillery, 8 for the double objective zone, 9 for the assist. The defenders have an action rating of 5, and they are in terrain for 6. So a 9 minus 6 is a +3. This rolls a little bit better. 9 plus 3 is 12. That's D1 and an automatic retreat. They are 3 from the
HQ refuge. 1, 2, 3. I guess we'll put it back there. And we will advance into the hex there. And I think what we're going to do is bring up the last Panzer Battalion here. 1, 2, 3 into the village, or rather the Crossroads. And now for the headquarters, we're going to deploy our Pioneer Battalion. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And the headquarters will go with him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we will redeploy the trains forward there, which will ghost to them. And that's going to do it for 116th Panzer Division. We'll clean this up and we'll roll for fatigue now. 3 or less, since they made a couple of attacks. And I'm on a roll now with these fatigue rolls. That's going to avoid fatigue, so their fatigue remains at 2. And 116th Panzer has a successful day. They managed to cover quite a bit of ground from the east back there. Took Parker's Crossroads from 82nd Airborne, and as you can see, pushed them back a bit. Now it remains to be seen whether or not they will be able to hold that against the expected American counterattacks. But at least for the Germans, the 20th of December gets off to a good start. The Americans are going to shift back up to the north here, and they're concerned about 2nd Infantry Division's situation here. If the Germans are able to get the 12th Volksgrenadier to activate before 2nd ID can go, they've got a real possibility of slamming the door shut on that chunk of the division that's cut off up there. So the Americans are going to try to activate 2nd ID and see if they can extricate their cut-off troops at this point. All right, picking up with the 2nd ID activation. Their trains are on the map. They are up here, sharing the entry point with the 9th Infantry Division's trains. The question is, we are not in a prepared defense. Is it time to go into a prepared defense? And I don't think so. I think we're going to base this decision on the chances we think we have of getting a full activation, because we'd like to get some full movement. We're going to have, for the snafu roll, it's going to be a -2 for fatigue. They're not coordinated, they're not mixed, but they do have another -1 for the game specific, which is going to drop them to -3. The trains are at optimal distance, which brings it back up to -2, but they are using tracks with good trafficability finally, so that brings it back down to -3, and they are crossing the streams with the 9th Infantry Division, which is a -4. That means an 11 or 12 to get a full activation. So I think with that in mind, we will go ahead and implement a prepared defense for 2nd ID at this point, even though that's really not our preference. I think this will at least stop the Germans from pushing them back in this Elsenborn area, or at least make it more difficult for them to do so. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and move on to the snafu. And like we said, it's going to be -2 for fatigue, -3 for game specific, -4 for tracks, -5 for crossing the streams, but then back up to -4 for optimal distance. So -4. Oh boy, well, that was close. 7 minus 4 is a 3, which is just what we need to get a partial, but we do at least get the partial. We have 4 organic artillery points along with 5 attached, which is a total of 9. That's going to be halved, rounded down. Will be 4 points available to the division for this activation. And as I said before, the main focus is trying to get these guys to be no longer cut off, which means continuing to withdraw to the west as we can here, and maybe counterattacking from the west, or at least moving in to establish a safe path to the headquarters there.
I'm going to take a few minutes and figure out the best way to do that, as well as where we are going to place our one objective marker for this activation, and then we will continue. I'm going to focus on the 12th Volksgrenadier sector here. So we've placed our objective marker here, which will create an objective zone that will encompass most of the units in this area. I think we're going to start off with 2nd of the 23rd. They're going to come down here and then make an attack assisted by 3rd of the 23rd, and we'll spend one of our artillery points in a suppression barrage. We have an action rating of 4. Red support is 5. 6-7 for the artillery, 8 for the assist. Defensively, it's an action rating of 4. They're in terrain for 5, and they do have support for 6. Now we also, before I forget, we're also in a prepared defense, which is going to take this 8 back down to a 7. So 7 minus 6. It's only a +1 on the combat attack here, and we get a 6. +1, that is just good enough. That's going to be an A1 on 2nd of the 23rd, but it will be a situational retreat and traffic. So 2nd of the 27th Volksgrenadier. Volksgrenadier will come 1, 2, 3 hexes back to the south. 2nd of the 23rd will take the hex and then also suffer their first loss. And then I'll go ahead and mark this with traffic, although I don't think that's going to be a major issue. Let's see. Next up, the 3rd of the 38th is going to get back on their deployed side. They're going to come down here for 1, 2, and I think we'll have 3rd of the 9th deploy also and move here. Now, let's go with an attack by 3rd of the 38th on 1st of the 27th. That's going to be another one of our artillery points in suppression. So that'll make it an action rating 4. Red support 5, 6, 7 for the artillery. Assist makes it an 8. Prepared defense brings it back down to a 7. The defenders have an action rating of 4. They are in terrain for 5, and they have support for 6. So another +1 attack. Let's see if the Americans can roll any better. And they managed to roll a little bit better. That's actually going to avoid any loss for 3rd of the 38th, and it will inflict another situational retreat and traffic. So 1st of the 27th will join their 2nd Battalion comrades and retreat to the south. Here's 3 hexes as 3rd of the 38th occupies the eastern end of the Elsenborn Ridge there. So we've managed to push the Germans back a bit. That's going to allow these units here to very slowly continue to withdraw. We want to bring him, the question, considering bringing 1st all the way down here, which will, yeah, well, if we do, yeah, let's go ahead and bring him here, I think. We'll do that. 2nd of the 38th is stuck. The only place he can go is here, where 1st of the 38th went, and I want to unstack those guys because they've been getting pounded by the German artillery. That leaves us with 2nd of the 9th. I don't really want to move him here and stack him with the 99th. I don't know if moving up there is going to do him any good, so he may just he may be stuck here for the moment. And I think the only thing we have left here is 1st and the 23rd. Whether we want to move him out, since we're in a prepared defense, it really, well, we would get that +1 for the terrain. So I think we will be content to leave him there. However, our visibility, I believe, is at least 2 hexes. Can we do anything with our remaining artillery? And yes, we do have 2 hexes of visibility. Anybody else we can shoot at in the area here? Yeah, 1st of the 9th can spot. He's going to actually, we're going to drop our 2 remaining artillery points right here on the Fusilier battalion of 12th Volksgrenadier. They're in terrain, so it'll be a 4, 5, or 6. And we get 1 hit and 1 miss. So that'll be a step loss to the 12th Fusiliers for 12th Volksgrenadier. Just continuing to chip away at the Germans any way we can. That's going to do it for the activation. Let's see if we have any 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everybody's within command radius, and we do now have a safe path for all of our units back to the headquarters, so no isolation losses for 2nd Infantry Division. Let's go ahead and roll for fatigue. They made a couple of attacks, so it'll be a 3 or less to increase the fatigue. And surprisingly, they do not accrue any additional fatigue. Now, I do think we want to try to get a second activation here if possible to continue withdrawing and resetting our position here. So 4, 5, or 6. And unfortunately, that 2 means that they are not going to get a second activation. 2nd Infantry Division is going to be done, but they have reestablished contact with the other half of the division. It's still not a great situation that they're in, but they have managed to push 12th Volksgrenadier back a little bit, and more importantly, they're now in a prepared defense. So I think it'll be a little more difficult for the Germans here to continue driving them west and northwest. So let's say the situation is close to getting stabilized up there in the 2nd ID sector, but again, the Germans may have something to say about that later in the day. With that, I think we're going to send it back to the Germans and see where they go next. The Germans are going to come right back here to the southwest, and remembering their lesson of what happened to 116th Panzer the last time it was sort of out on its own, they're going to activate Panzer Lehr just to the east of it and see if it can continue to push west and get in a better supporting position for 116th. So so they're not left hanging out on the limb as they were on the 17th of December. So up next, Panzer Lehr. Activating Panzer Lehr now. The trains, as you can see, are on map right here, and we have a complete MSR. We are not going into a prepared defense, so let's go right to the snafu roll. You can see they have a fatigue of 2, so that's going to be -2. They're not marked coordination or mixed. There's no game specific. Trains are at optimal distance, which brings it up to a -1. They're not crossing the streams using tracks, so it looks like a -1 for Panzer Lehr. And that's a good roll. That 10 becomes a 9. That is a full activation. That's going to be 2 objective markers and all of their artillery. That's 2 organic and 2 assigned. Gives them a total of 4. And now the question is, what do we do with our objective markers? You can see we're located basically right in this area. We'd like to get out here to support 116th Panzer, perhaps maybe a drive up the secondary road here to their east, basically keeping the pressure on 7th Armored Division. With that being the case, we don't really, they're mostly dual units, so we'll be able to engage them, which does not require an objective zone. So maybe we'll take a look at this, figure out where exactly in here we want to throw our objective markers out, come up with at least a general plan of action for the activation, and then we'll continue. All right, looking things over, we've opted to place both our objective markers here on these 82nd Airborne battalions along this road here. This is obviously a road that the Germans are going to want cleared, and so I think we are going to task a couple of our battalions out here to start dealing with them. However, to start off the activation, we're actually going to get the Panzer battalion here to come up one half, 1.5. And he's now in the AB Izaka Task Force Ray. He's going to engage him. We have a 5 + 4 is 9. Ray has a 3 + 4 for 7. So it's a +2 on the engagement table for the Panzer Battalion. Wow. That is a 5. That is going to be a fire loss and traffic. So Task Force Ray digging in there in Vilsam. That's going to be a loss to the Panzer Battalion, and it's also going to stop them dead in their tracks. So this is interesting. We're going to spend our second fire event to engage Ray again, and hopefully we can roll better than a 3. Indeed we do. The 9 plus 2 is 11. That is a target loss and retreat. So Ray, after a valiant stand there, is going to end up retreating and taking a step loss. He still has 1 step remaining, so I think they overachieved there, certainly. However, for the Germans, that will clear up Piper's MSR finally, and maybe they can get going today. It was just a little costly in terms of the Panzer loss, and now the fact that the battalion is stuck there. So let's see how we deal with that. We're going to go ahead and turn over, deploy von Valois. He will move west 1, and he will engage Task Force Fuller. This is going to be another 4 plus 5 is 9 versus 3 plus 4 for 7. That's a plus 2 again on the engagement. And this turns out much better for the Germans right off the bat. That is an 8 plus 2 is 10. That's target loss and retreat. So Fuller will flip over to his move side, 1, 2, 3, and fall back to the tracks there while taking a step loss. I think that's going to leave him with 2 steps. And sadly, he is probably the one of the stronger task forces left within 7th Armored Division. All right, we've used 1 movement point and 1 fire event from von Valois here. The question is, do we have him push down the road here, or do we have him turn and pursue Fuller up the secondary road here, which is really kind of the axis of advance I think we're looking for Panzer Lehr. Let's see. Let's go ahead and you can go 2, 3, 4 and a half. He could get there and engage Fuller yet again. Yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that. So we're looking at 2, 3, 4 and a half. And remember, 82nd has no support anymore, so there's no AV-ZOC, which would prevent him from advancing. And he will engage Fuller yet again. This time, however, Fuller is on his move side, so it's only a 6. So a 9 to 6 is a plus 3 now for von Valois. And the 7 plus 3 becomes a 10. That will inflict yet another step loss. 3, and he will end up back here. And that's going to take Fuller down to his last remaining step as well. That's going to be the 2nd fire event of von Valois, so he will be stopped. Now, what are we going to do here? We can go, let's do this, I think. I think we'll bring him 2, 3, 4. And we'll bring these guys up 1, 2. We're going to have the 1st and the 901st make an attack here, assisted by 1st and the 902nd. We will spend an artillery point to make a suppression barrage. So it's going to be 4. Red support makes 5. 6 for the double objective zone. 7, 8 for the artillery. 9 for the assist. The defenders have an action rating of 5. They have no support. They are in terrain for 6, and they are not in a prepared defense. So a 9 minus 6 is a plus 3 on the combat table. And that's a decent roll. That's going to be a 12. It's a D1 and an automatic retreat. They do have a safe path, I believe. Let's see here. There's a zone of control there. There's a. You know what? I think they may. Have been cut off by von Valois here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Can't shorten that up at all. We can't get through here because of the zones of control from these two German units. We can't get through here. Same thing. We've got zones of control here and here. I wonder if they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They are one hex too far for a safe path. So they will ignore that and instead take a second step loss. I don't think that was in the Germans' plan at all. So two-step losses on 3rd of the 505th, and we know that they are now without a safe path back to the headquarters. Let's see about 1st of the 505th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, he's okay. He's just one too far away. We'll see what the Americans decide to do about that. There's not much that the Germans can do about it right now. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and stop this. I'm going to record the losses for the two-step losses here for the 82nd, and then we've got probably just some movement. I doubt we'll have any more combat this activation, so we'll pick back up here in just a second. Now here we are at the end of the first activation for Panzer Lehr. You can see the headquarters has moved up. We've left the trains back where they were. They are still at optimal distance. And I think it's time to just clean up and then roll for fatigue. They made one attack, so that's going to be a 3 or less to increase the fatigue. And we blow our first fatigue roll of the day. That's going to make their fatigue increase to 3. And now the question is, do we want to go for a second activation? And I think we do. So this is going to be a 4, 5, or 6. We'll see what happens here. And we get a 5. So a second activation is in the cards. The MSR is complete as the trains have not moved. We now have a fatigue of 3, so it's going to be -3. No coordination, not mixed. No game specific. Trains are at optimal distance. That's a -2, and that's all we've got. So a -2 now for Panzer Lehr in their second activation. And that doesn't matter. They shrug that off. They get yet another full activation. And I think, well, let's see. Do we want to do that or not? Just looking at initial thoughts were to go ahead and plunk our objective markers down here on these two 82nd battalions and maybe just try and finish them off or drive them away from where they are at least. But we are getting close enough here to where we might be able to mix it up with 7th Armored a little bit, and maybe we want to consider some objective markers up there. Actually, though, I think we are going to stay focused on the 2 battalions down here. We're going to try and clean this up and clear this road. So with the 2 objective markers and 4 artillery points now, we will go ahead and pick this up. Let me shift us a little bit to the west so you can get or zoom in a bit here so we can get a little better look at this. All right, starting off this activation, I think we are going to, let's see, that's 1, 2, okay, here we go, 1, 2, 3, this guy, 1, 2, okay. All right, we'll start off with another attack here on 3rd of the 505th. This time it's going to be from 1st of the 901st, again supported by 1st of the 902nd with 1 artillery point for suppression. So that's 4 red support, 5, 6 double objective zone, 7, 8 artillery, 9 for the assist. The defenders have an action rating of 5, no support, no prepared defense, but they do have terrain, which is a 6. So 9 to 6, that's a +3 again. We'll see how the attack goes. It's not very good. That is a 5. +3 becomes an 8. That is an A1, situational retreat, and traffic. Now, as we pointed out before, the 3rd of the 505th has no safe path. So they will ignore that and take a step loss instead. And looking here, that is the last step of 3rd of the 505th. So that will eliminate the battalion, and 1st of 901st will occupy that while taking a step loss in the process. And for Lair, that's going to be his first step loss for the Panzer Grenadier Battalion. All right, now let me go ahead and take care of some of the bookkeeping there, and then we'll continue momentarily. All right, picking back up where we left off, we're going to bring the Panzer Battalion down 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's going to use 2 fire events here to do an attack by fire on 1st of the 505th. They are in terrain, so it's going to be a 5 or 6 to score a hit. Wow. Okay, there's 2 step losses on the battalion, and now he is stopped. Let's go ahead and mark that. Now we'll bring up 2nd of the 901st. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to make an attack supported by the Panzer Battalion here on the 1st of the 505th. We will spend an artillery point for suppression, and it's going to be 4, support 5, double objective zone 6, 7, 8 artillery, 9 for the assist. The Americans have an action rating of 5, and they are in terrain for 6, so it's a +3 again. And it's not a very good roll. That's a 4, becomes a 7. It's going to be an A1, situational retreat and traffic. So they will clear them off the road, and they will force them to retreat. This battalion does have a safe path, just barely, which will require them to retreat locally to the rear at least. But that's going to put them in an inconvenient spot, I think, for the Germans. They're going to go 1, 2, 3 back here. We'll see what they end up doing, but they are adjacent, as you can see, to the 1/16th MSR. Last thing we need is a paratrooper battalion digging in back here along the MSR. So that may have backfired a little bit on the Germans. We'll see. Now, continuing on with the rest of Lair, we've got a battalion here which will go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Von Falwell will move up here. He will engage. That's Chappie, and it is 4 + 5 is 9 to a 3 + 4 is 7. So +2 for Von Falwell, and he doesn't really need it. That's a 12. That is a target loss and retreat. So go ahead and send them 1, 2, 3, and Chappie. Let's see, these guys are pretty shot up. So, okay, actually no, he had three steps remaining. So he is now the strongest remaining task force in the division, along with Task Force Wempel. However, I may have spoken too soon, as Von Falwell is going to continue moving and now engage Wempel. This will be again a 9 - 7, so a +2 on the engagement table again. And once again, Von Falwell rolls a 10, becomes a 12. That is a target loss and retreat, so Wempel will tumble back up the road here, and he will suffer a step loss, leaving him with 1 step remaining. That's going to bring Von Falwell to a stop here, and all we have left now really is the headquarters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see, we don't want any. All right, let's go ahead and 1, 2.5 here. We will bring. We have to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's still an optimal range, so I think we're going to leave the trains where they are, leave them on their non-ghosted side rather than redeploying them forward and ghosting them. And I believe that is all we've got left for Panzer Lehr. There's no isolation effects here to kick in, so we'll just clean up the activation, and we will roll for fatigue, and we'll see. It's a 3 or less, and they accrue yet another step of fatigue. That's going to bring them to fatigue 4, and that's going to have an impact tomorrow or in the future until they go ahead and take a recovery activation to lower that from 4. They will not be able to get any second activations in a turn. So decision time for the Germans regarding Panzer Lehr over the next couple of days. So we will mark him finished, and with that I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. We've got to jump into the 20th. The Panzer divisions are on the march again to the west. This time it is the poor 82nd Airborne that is the focus of their attentions. Meanwhile, back to the north, the Americans have started to reconstitute their line and undo some of the damage from the SS attack earlier on. So plenty more action to come today. Appreciate you guys watching this episode once again, and we'll